I felt overwhelmed, like maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this was a bad idea. Hello, and welcome to my horrible student teaching experience. Now, before we get started, you may already wonder, why was it horrible? There was a lot of situations in here that I pulled from. I can't share all of it, obviously, but I tried to share the points in which I felt were the most important. So if you're interested to hearing about this, then let's get started. My student teaching was coming up in August, which was the beginning of the school year. And at that time, I had already spent 60 hours in a teacher's classroom working with her, planning lessons, and teaching, and this was all in 4th grade. And so I was supposed to stay with her come August for my student teaching. So that's kind of how the program worked. And so I was looking forward to it. She was an amazing teacher. I loved how positive she was. She had a really great flow of her classroom. So come August, I sent her an email and I was like, hey, I'm still really looking forward to student teaching. Can I come in and help you set up your classroom and get everything started so that way I'm just part of the whole experience? So she replied to my email and had mentioned that there was some schools that were hiring for long-term subs. She also said she felt like I didn't need to do the entire 16 weeks of student teaching and that I was likely ready to just have my own classroom and I can use her as a reference. So I thought, okay, it was really unexpected, but I thought, why not? I was paying rent at that time and I did have bills, and during student teaching, you don't get paid for the entire 16 weeks. But if you do a long-term sub job, you only don't get paid for 4 weeks, and then you get paid for the rest of the time you're teaching. And then obviously once I pass my state exams, I can go ahead and get hired as a teacher. And another issue was when August comes and you do student teaching, it's unlikely there's going to be a job open after student teaching since the school year is pretty much set. And sometimes it happens, but most likely that doesn't happen. So I applied for this job online and they had called me and I was out of town and I did my interview. And within a day, they called me back and they were like, we would love for you to come teach at our school. We look forward to meeting you. I then reached out to my advisor, Deborah, and I told her, hey, I got hired for this long-term sub job and I want to take that instead of working with this other teacher because she's the one who told me to apply for it. And this was Deborah's first year, and Deborah had said, okay, we'll set up a meeting and you also need a student teacher, someone to work with you during your student teaching. And I thought, great, everything's lining up. It's the grade I want to teach, which is 4th. It's at the school I really love, and it's only 5 minutes away compared to my student teaching was going to be 30 minutes away. So I was really excited. So we set up a meeting with everybody. So they find me a lead teacher, Deborah's there, the principal's there, and we have a meeting to make sure everyone's on board. And Veronica is sitting at the table and she proceeds to tell me, I'm not going to spend the weekends working or after school. I'm here about 15 to 30 minutes before school starts, and that's what I have. I have other priorities and I just can't be here a lot. And Deborah did say, as a student teacher, she's going to need help here and there. So I understand you have lots of other responsibilities, but she's going to need help. So that was kind of discouraging a little bit, but I thought, oh, well, it's fine. So let's fast forward now to what's happening. It's going to be the beginning of the year and we have open house. And if you're not a teacher, open house is just where your students come in, they see your classroom, they meet you. Maybe you have a printout of what you're going to teach, all those fun things. So before that happens, we have a meeting as teachers and it kind of just goes over the school rules and you have different trainings. And they had brought in lunch for us, which was a bean and cheese burrito. And this is going to come back later on. So the next day is the day to set up for open house. So I get up way early in the morning. I can't even sleep. I'm excited. I get to my classroom at 6 a.m. I am starting to put everything away that I had bought at the store. I bought some cute baskets. I bought some little decorations. It's about 2 o'clock. I haven't showered and I'm sweaty and I'm very hungry. I literally didn't eat all day. My student teacher Veronica comes in and I tell her, I'm going to go home, I'm going to eat, and I'm going to shower. And she said, well, why don't you just eat a bean and cheese burrito? So at this time, I was like a health nut and I worked out and I ate healthy. And honestly, I didn't want to eat a bean and cheese burrito from the day before. I already felt like poop from it and I wanted something different. So I was like, I'm going to go home and shower and I'm going to eat some lunch. Like, Why are you nitpicking me? Open house comes, I have everything ready, it's going great, no issues. All of a sudden, I get a call from the principal's office to go in there, and I start to think, did I say something wrong to a parent? Maybe I didn't do something I was supposed to, right? All these things start flooding your brain. I get to the office, Veronica's there, Deborah's there, and the principal, and I'm like, okay. And the principal says, we tried to find you for like an hour, and you weren't there. You're not supposed to leave. Where were you? And I said, well, I did tell Veronica I was going to go eat lunch and shower. And Veronica was like, I offered her a bean and cheese burrito, and she didn't want it. And the principal's like, we don't know if you're ready for this. This might be too much. And at this point, I was really proud of myself, and I did advocate for myself. And I said, there's nothing more that I want than to be here. I was really gross and sweaty, and I wanted to present myself to parents in a professional way. If I would have known that I couldn't leave, I would have completely planned everything differently. So the principal was like, okay, and kind of just let it go. And at that point, I thought, why didn't Veronica say something? Why didn't she tell me? Like, she's my lead teacher. That would have been helpful, but I kind of just let it go. So it was going to be school the following day, and Deborah told me, you need to have this done, and this done, and this done, and this done. And then she asked me to meet her at the school at like 7 o'clock. So I meet her at the school. She has this box of different stuff. She proceeds to tell me, your bulletin board outside your classroom needs to have every single student's name on it, even though the desks have their names on them. And you need to do this and this and this and this. So I thought, okay. So I literally did what I could. Once it became 9 o'clock at night, I went home. Like, I didn't get everything done that she wanted, but I got some stuff done. So school starts, right? I meet my students. I'm really excited. And I get an email from Deborah that tells me I need to be sending in my lesson plans every single Sunday. And I need to start teaching all of my lessons coming Wednesday or whatever, okay? So I never really got a chance to set up a good flow of my classroom. I never got a chance to know my students, and I didn't really get a chance to teach behaviors the way I wanted. In the later years, the first week is where I teach all of my behaviors. We practice behaviors, we get to know each other. So I don't know why that wouldn't have been more important to set up a classroom environment, but it wasn't. I had to jump into teaching. So I was like, okay, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm spending, other than when I teach my fitness classes, sometimes I'd still go back to the school. The gym was luckily only 5 minutes away from the school. So I'm spending all my time at this school. I am there after school late. I am there every single weekend. I'm spending probably 6 hours Saturday and Sunday lesson planning at least, so that way I can write out every single lesson. I needed to have a pre-assessment for every lesson. Then for math, I was told every math lesson has to have some type of hands-on activity. And then after every lesson, I have to have a formative. And then I need to write, what am I going to do with that formative? How is that going to instruct my lessons for the next day? And this is all great. This is a great way of having things go in your classroom. But when you're a student teacher and you're also trying to just understand the curriculum, that could be a lot. It would have been nice if I could just have planned a lesson and then maybe add on a pre-assessment and then slowly add on a formative. Because when you're trying to do all that at once, it's really overwhelming. So I was at the school planning lessons, and I never really even got a chance to get into the curriculum. I just had to look over what they were doing and write that in my lesson plans. So, wait, it gets better. So I send off my lesson plan to Deborah. And there is about 20 fixes and I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not exaggerating here. There is 20 fixes that needs to be done. So I am there fixing my lesson plan, and I fix it and send it. It's another thing. Fix it and send it. By 10 o'clock at night, my boyfriend is like, you need to go to bed. You have to work tomorrow, and you fixed what you could. Like, it's Monday. If she wants more fixes, you can do it throughout the week. And I was like, you're right. So I sent her an email and was like, okay, I will fix these in the morning. I'm going to go to bed. So I go to bed, and I continue on my teaching. And Veronica does what she says. When she said she'd come into my classroom 15 minutes in the morning, she always did. She came in the morning, was like, hey, do you need anything? And sometimes I had questions and other times I didn't, and she'd show me something really quick, and then she would leave. After about 2 weeks, it was time for my first lesson observation. So I had planned somewhat in the curriculum, but I wanted to reach out to Veronica to see if she had any input. And Veronica just said, just follow the curriculum. That's what I do. Great, Veronica. So glad that you could help me with that. So I planned out my reading lesson. And for this next part, I think it's best if I show you how this went. So go ahead and watch what happened next. All right, so let's go ahead and go over your lesson that you taught today. How did you feel about it?
I feel good. I mean, there's things I can work on.
Well, I'm just going to be honest, and I'm going to look at you as if I was a principal. And this is going to help you become a better teacher because I had a principal one time who was really ruthless. And so I'm going to do this as if I was the meanest principal possible. So that way you can learn how to overcome these things. Okay?
Okay.
So I don't know if you noticed, but I had a timer. So I was timing your students. Within 2 minutes, you had about 2 students who looked away from their book. 5 minutes, you had about 3 students who looked away. Within 7 minutes, you had at least 6 students who were no longer looking at their book. And you had 1 student who was literally playing with another piece of paper the whole 10 minutes since you started. And then here's some feedback I have. I need you to be walking around the room while you read the story. I think that's a goal that you need to work on is how can I read a story while walking around the room while redirecting? Because that's really important. You can do all of those things. And then I wrote a bunch of other notes. So I think it's best if I just actually give this to you. So that way you can look over and you can work on these 10 things before our next observation. Okay. So after this, I decided I need a little bit more help because I'm not making Deborah happy and I'm not getting help from Veronica. So I reached out to another teacher and we'll call her Anna. And Anna is a godsend. I would not be the teacher I am today if it was not for Anna. So Anna was pregnant and she was not teaching at the time. So she would actually come to my classroom on the weekends and spend 5 hours working with me. Sometimes I would go to her house and she would help me lesson plan the entire week. The lesson was pulling information from a text. So the point was going to be I was going to model this and I ended up finding a flip book that the students could use and later on they could color it if they wanted to. The point of the lesson was for them to pull information from the text. So I model how to do this. Then I had them do it with a partner, and then we met back together and we talked about what they came up with. Now, let's go ahead and look at how that went with Deborah and what Deborah thought. All right, we just had our second observation. How do you feel about it?
I feel pretty good. I mean, I worked hard on it.
It's very interesting. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not even gonna use my notes right now. I'm just gonna be honest. I feel you might have to consider withdrawing from this program right now and maybe applying next semester.
Wait,
I
what?
just don't see this getting any better. And I'm just not really understanding where you got your teaching skills from. And I'm starting to worry you're just going to fail. So I'm not even sure, like, if my notes are going to do any good. I mean, how do you feel?
I worked really hard on this lesson, and I worked with another teacher as well. So,
okay, well, you know what? I will come and I will teach a lesson, and then I will have you teach a lesson after that. And maybe after I do that, we can see if it gets better. Because if not, then yeah, I think withdrawing is going to be our best option. Hello, future me here. There was one thing that I did forget to mention that was in my notes. There was another student that was also in the teaching program with me who was student teaching at this time as well. And Deborah had told her the same thing, that she was likely going to fail and she should probably withdraw. Sadly, that student ended up going with Deborah's advice and withdrawing from the program, which is really sad. She did end up continuing her education and getting student teaching going again the next semester, and she is a teacher. But I just wanted to share that because I know I forgot to put that in there. So back to the video. Goes on. I'm still waiting for my advisor to teach reading to my class because, again, if I don't teach reading correctly, I'm going to fail. So I reached out to Veronica and said, hey, my advisor is now going to watch me teach math and we're doing rounding. So Veronica said, great. here's how I would teach it. I would take 59, okay, and you can draw a line out and you could show them that way. Or you could show the underlying number and you could say, is that number going to go up or stay the same? So that's one way to teach rounding. Deborah came into my classroom, and the first thing I do is I first show this, right? Because that's what I'm going to be focusing on. She interrupts my lesson and tells me pretty much it's wrong. Then she proceeds to draw a vertical line instead and teaches the students this way and says, this is how we learn rounding. Now, if she would have waited, this was going to be my lesson after that, is showing it on a horizontal line and then showing where 59 would be the closest to, which I was getting to. Now in college, I had tutored kids in math, and math I absolutely love because reading is very subjective, but math is one right answer. But you can get to that one answer 20 different ways. I'm not one to say this way of teaching is wrong, right? If a student learns that way, who cares? But anyways, she didn't let me get to there. So afterwards, she told me I was wrong and I should have been teaching with the vertical line. And spoiler alert, I never taught with the vertical line. I tried multiple times later on, and my brain just did not work that way. So going forward, Deborah teaches a reading lesson, and it actually was a great lesson. There was nothing wrong with it. It was a mini lesson. She taught it how a lot of times I teach reading as well on my Making Predictions video. I thought it was great. So I decided I'm just going to teach it exactly how she taught and call it good. So luckily, she came and observed my next lesson. I taught it exactly how she taught it, and everything was okay. So I covered a little bit about what Deborah did. I wanted to kind of talk about some other things that were going on with Veronica and another teacher. So I'm not even going to make up a name for this teacher because I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about her, but she just seemed not very happy. I went and observed one of her lessons, and she put down a student who could not read well, and I don't agree with that. So I never went and observed her again. But she had planned out a school field trip for students. And so I had reached out to parents to come and volunteer on this field trip. And I had this field trip rescheduled on me 3 separate times. I never got an email again about rescheduling. So my students are ready to go for the field trip. We're walking to the school bus, and this teacher is like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "We're on the field trip." "There's no room on here. You need to get up. Why didn't you read your email?" And she's yelling in front of my students, in front of the parents, and in front of her class and her class's parents. And I'll tell you, in that moment, I have never been more embarrassed in my life. So I walk off the school bus, and I still remember to this day, I didn't even know what to say. I just looked at the parents and I was like, "I am so sorry." And they're like, "No, that's wrong. She shouldn't have talked to you like that. If it was rescheduled, all she had to say that. She shouldn't yell at you like that." And so they were frustrated, and they ended up going to talk to the principal. So I get back to my class, and I put on a movie, and I go in the hallway, and I just cry because I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt overwhelmed. Like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this was a bad idea. So one thing Veronica did do is she saw me in the hallway and she hugged me. Then this is the weird part, and I can't remember why, but she then went through, she's like, "You never got the email." And I said, "No." She literally went through my email, she went through the spam, and she went through my deleted emails, and there really was no email. So I don't know why she didn't just believe me, but I don't know if the email was ever sent. The other teacher's email was never looked at. Eventually, the principal just kind of brushed over the incident, and there was no real apology or anything. At this time, I was also going into other teachers' classroom and observing them teach. So one day, Deborah had sent me an email and said, "I want you to go into other teachers' classrooms and watch them teach." And I said, "Great." Now, did I do that every day? No, because I also need prep time to grade, to restructure things if they didn't work, right? We have prep times as teachers for legal reasons. So, Deborah proceeded to tell me for 2 weeks I needed to go into different classrooms and observe the teachers. Now, before this, I had just wrote out notes on when I was watching the lessons, and I could take away parts and pieces. Deborah proceeded to send me a 2-page assignment to fill out every time I observed a teacher. And then also at the bottom, I had to rate the teacher on a scale 1 to 5. Personally, I did not do that. One, I'm in their classroom observing them. I'm a new teacher. I'm not going to rate them on 1 to 5. Like, it's great to look at teachers and be like, oh, I wouldn't do that. Or, yeah, I love that. But to rate them in front of them is just wrong. So, and then also, why do I have to fill out a 2-page piece of paper on observing a lesson? Why can't I just write my notes? Like, I'm a visual learner, so trying to write out everything. And I just thought, why? So, I mean, I did it a couple times, but after that I didn't do it. And then she did ask for them. So I gave her a couple of them. And then I told her, I get the idea of what I'm looking for. I'm going to just write out my own notes. One morning, I'm in my classroom working on things before students come in, and Veronica comes in, and I'm just kind of like worn out. I'm tired. There's a lot going on. And she asked, is everything okay? And I told her, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm working almost every evening. I go teach fitness classes. I come back and I'm still working. I'm working all weekend. And she said, yeah, a lot of first-year teachers work about 70 hours a week. So if you're not like hitting 70, I don't know. Like maybe you're not working a lot, but 70 hours is pretty normal. And I was like, okay. Then I thought to myself, okay, what if the person has a job? Because a lot of teachers have second jobs. Or what if the person has children, and they have to pick them up from school or daycare? Luckily, I didn't have a lot of other responsibilities, but goodness, 70 hours a week is a lot. Another incident had happened with Veronica that made me realize that I was only going to start taking what she said with a grain of salt. So I had told her that I was having to extend my math time. So her and I had planned out what we were going to be doing for every hour in the day. She proceeded to tell me, your students shouldn't need that long. What are you doing? And I just told her, by the time I teach my lesson, they do whole group and I do small group. I'm just running out of time with my small group. We are in our 4th grade meeting, and I don't know if she knows I could hear her or what, but this other teacher proceeds to tell her, yeah, I had to extend my math time to 50 minutes. Veronica says, oh, that's amazing that you adjust for your students. That's great. So I don't know if she was lying to me or the other teacher, but at that point I was like, you know what? Whatever. So I'm getting towards the end of my student teaching. We have a meeting with Veronica and Deborah, and they plan out kind of what your grade's going to be on a scale 1 to 4. They rate you on different areas. And I was actually really impressed because they both were pretty positive towards that meeting. I was glad to see they saw that I was working extremely hard. I was taking all feedback and I was truly doing the best I could. As I still mentioned, Veronica wasn't the biggest help. There was times I would ask, can I see your lesson plan? And she would literally just hold a piece of paper and show, this is what I do. It was never I was able to physically see them. So I'm still not sure to this day why it was such a secret. And I'm still not sure why she couldn't have spent 1 extra hour with me after school. Anytime Veronica told me something, Deborah would not like it. So I eventually reached out to the other advisor at the college who was in charge of the whole program. And I kind of told her what was going on. And she had just said, go with what Deborah says. She's your advisor. And then once you're done with student teaching, you can kind of just do what you want. So I was like, okay. So I also stopped in some ways asking Veronica just because she was very condescending to me anyways. And later on, talking to other teachers that had worked at that school, I had never mentioned her as a person. But I had mentioned that there was a 4th grade teacher there that wasn't always the biggest help to me. And they said, oh yeah, is it so-and-so? She's just very condescending. That's just her personality. And I would see her interact with other teachers. And so I don't know if she notices she does it, but she's not very friendly. So that's just kind of how she is. So at that point too, I stopped taking it personally. And so that was my horrible student teaching experience. So fun reliving all of it again. If it weren't for Anna, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't be where I am today. So that was my student teaching experience. I'd love to hear your personal experiences. My biggest advice is find somebody that you can depend on. Find somebody that could help you, because that's what saved me in the end, is finding someone who can help me. And advocating for yourself. I advocated for that A so hard. I wanted to make sure that I was doing the best I could, but I also wanted to show I could prove it. So I always brought all my evidence to the table, and I'm glad I did. I hope that if you are going to be a teacher, that yours is much better than mine. And looking back, did it make me a stronger teacher? Yes. Are there better ways to have done it? Definitely. So I hope to see you in the next video. Check out my how to create a lesson plan or my video on making predictions, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.